In this video, we're going to have a look at working with users and teams in your CRM. So in the top right-hand corner, you can click on your name and then we can access our list of users and also our teams for security. So let's have a look at users first. If you've connected your database to an accounting system, it will have pulled through everybody that is a past or present employee and given them a record here in users. That doesn't mean that they have access to your database. So we can determine who has access by who we've invited and using this locked column here. If someone is locked, they don't have access and they haven't been allocated a license. If this is no, that means that they do have a license to access CRM. To make life easier moving forward, I recommend setting up a couple of filters. So in here, I've got all the users that aren't locked and are active, and I've got another view for inactive users. I can also add certain columns to my view so that I can apply a layout to it and see further information, such as which teams people belong to. So if your users have already come across from your accounting system, what you'll be able to do is click on them to open the record, and most of the time you'll need to go and change their login. So what that means, they'll need an email address to log into the system. Sometimes records will come across from the accounting system and this isn't present. So you'll need to click on this change login button, add their email address and click OK, then you'll be able to send them an invitation. One thing to note, however, is before we send an invitation, we need to give people permissions for what they can see and do in the system. So that is done by adding them to a team. If someone is not a member of a team, when they log into CRM, they're not going to be able to see anything. They'll just see the logo up the top and they're not actually going to be able to interact with the database at all. So before we send the invitation to our users, we want to add them to a team. And now let's have a look at how we set up our teams in the system. So again, top right hand corner of CRM, click on your name and come down to Teams. Now by default, every database has a default team called administrators. So anyone in this group can see, do and touch everything in CRM so that you'll see all of the options are selected here in all of the areas. So we can go and decide who's a member of this team. So they'll have full permission to delete, to import, to export, to see all your dashboards and reporting, etc. So we only want system administrators in that group. Other users, we can set permissions for what they can see and do and be quite detailed about that throughout the system. So I can click up here on New Team and I'll go and add a team called the Office team. Another thing that I can use Teams for is to get my generic email addresses into the system. So every user in CRM, when you send an email, you'll be able to select from their email address as the sender of an email. If you have email addresses like info at, quotes at, sales at, accounts at, etc. that don't belong to a person, we can go and put those against a team. So what that means is that when I send an email in future, I could send it from the sales team that's got a generic email, from the finance team, the warehouse team, basically any email address that doesn't belong to a specific person. I can go and add that in there. So I'll just go and throw in a fake email address in here. What I can also do is record the phone number. If you have a VoIP system integrated with your database, you'll be able to go and select an extension for that particular user so that their calls, incoming and outgoing, can be logged in CRM as activities. With this team, we can also decide which types of opportunities they can access in the system. So opportunities are your sales pipeline, so over on the side here, and depending on how you've configured them and the types that you're set up, you're able to limit the access to certain types to particular teams. We always want to make sure our team is active so that we can use it. If we wanted to archive a team and put it out of service, we'd come in and untick this box. The other thing we can do is if we want to be able to assign records to the team rather than to individuals, we can click this assignable box. So that means when we're making choices about who to assign records to in the system, we could pick the Office team instead of a specific person. If we have multiple teams in the system, it's a good idea to put in a description to explain exactly what this team is to be used for. So that's going to be easier in future as people come and go at your organization. So once we've put in the basic details, we can hit save and close. What I'll then get is a page of permissions that I can go and select the ones that are appropriate. Once I'm finished, I'll need to click on this update button to apply the changes. So you can see that we've broken permissions into logical groups. So I can click on the permission button over here to expand the permissions. So these are all record types inside of CRM, and these are the security permissions that you can give people. So what we can do to save you ticking every box one by one is click across the top here. So if I want the Office team to be able to view all these records, I can tick there. I want them to also be able to create them and edit them, but I'm not going to give them delete permission. I'm going to allow them to import data, but not to export data. And I'm also going to allow them to merge duplicates, but they can't view dashboards. So I can then come and make some changes to this if I wanted to, and take away certain permissions or go and randomly add certain permissions. So once I'm done, I can then close that box and move on to the next section and continue through all the way down the page until I've got the appropriate permissions set up for my team. Now, another handy thing that you can do here is you'll notice over on the menu of CRM, we've got a lot of options here. If people don't need access to a particular area, you just don't give them view permission. So that way it's going to keep their menu nice and clean with what's applicable to their role or their job. So for example, if your business will never use this training area, you can just not give anyone access to it. So it's not going to appear on their menu and keep things nice and simple. Once we've input all of our permissions into the system, we can go and attach members to the team. So there's two different ways that we can do that. I can click down here and pick from my existing users and go and add them to this team. So I can add as many people as I want and then hit on save and also update to apply my changes. The other thing that I can do is I can come back to the user record here and click on add new, and what I'll be able to do is then go and select the Office team. So there's two ways of doing it. We can do it from the team itself by adding individual users, or we can come into a user's record and add them against a team that way. Now you can see here that a user can belong to multiple teams. So the administrators team can see and do everything in the system. And even though the Office team has limited permissions, the administrator permissions are higher. So Brett is going to be able to see everything in the system as an administrator. So basically, the higher set of permissions will win. Down here, we've also got an area where we can choose who people's calendars are shared with. So the default here is all users, but we could equally take that away and say that they can only share their calendar with the admin team, and then I can update that and apply the change. So coming back into my main view here, I can now see the different teams that people are attached to in the specific layout that I've set up. Now, if you have somebody that leaves your organization, what you want to do is open up their record here, click edit, and go and lock the record. So that will take the license away from that user. That will then give you room in your system to create a new user record and make sure that is unlocked, and then the license will be allocated to the new user. So we don't want to go and rename existing users with new people. We basically want to deactivate the old user and create a new user. So that's the easiest way of doing it. And just make sure that when you've created the new user, you've attached them to a team, and you've also come in here and sent them the invitation. So that will send them an email saying, hello, you've been invited to use this database. Please go and set a password, and then they're going to be able to log into the system. If people log in and they can't see or do things that they would expect to be able to, it could be an issue with permissions. So you'll need to come back in, have a look at the team, figure out what they're trying to achieve, and see whether or not you need to adjust these permissions to make it possible or not. But once we've set up a team in the system, I'll just hop in here and you can see that we can now send an email from the Office team, and that will come from the email address that I put in there. When I create a new company down here, in the assign to area, I can now assign that to the Office team instead of a specific person. So I can assign records, I can send emails from, and I can set permissions for what people can see and do throughout the system.